When I think about medieval times or Renaissance or just between 1400, 1800 era, I think about the aesthetics, like the long, heavy dresses, cottages, writing letters, spending more time outside, just that type of aesthetic, Bridgerton type of thing. But the reality is that it was such a creepy era. It's mainly because a lot of things were unknown. As we're growing as a society, we are learning new things. Today, I'm going to go over some of the creepy, weird things that were considered normal during that time. So let's get started. Like, the Victorian era was such a morbid time in history. One of the weird things that people would do is photograph themselves with their dead family members. And that's not the only creepy thing. The creepy thing is the fact that they would set them up to look like they were alive, and they would take pictures with them. During that time, people saw that taking photos with their dead family members was like a memento of their deceased loved one. So warning, I'm about to put up a few of the creepy photos, and I'm not gonna lie, some of them you can't really tell who's the deceased loved one. Like, honestly, I couldn't find any information on how they made their eyes look alive. Like, in my mind, when someone passes away, like, their eyes go up, like up into your head, and you're not looking straight ahead. So I'm not really sure how they made this look, but let me show you. So a lot of these photos, they try their best way to make their loved ones look alive, and they did so many little tricks to keep them upheld. Like, the way they had them sit up in a position to where like they're held up, or they would position like family members next to them holding them up, or they would use props like dolls or their animals. Young children, they would use like someone holding their head up or something, and they would put a curtain over it so that way you wouldn't be able to see the person that was holding them up. And a lot of these photos, you can't really tell that they're passed away, and I feel like that's the creepiest part, because if you showed me these photos without telling me that they were passed away, I would not even, like, some of them you can kind of tell, and I would just say, oh my god, that looks creepy. But a lot of them you can't even tell that they're photos of family members that passed away. Okay, this next one is really weird. I don't know where in their mind they thought that this would be correct, but in medieval England, they believed that they could diagnose you just by looking at your urine, by the color, the consistency, and the taste of the person's urine. And this urine diagnosis, it dates back to 100 BC. And by late Middle Ages, then people, instead of start taking their pee to professionals, then they started looking at their own pee and diagnosing themselves. In the 13th century, there was a book called On Urines, where it explained what color was your diagnosis. So wine-colored urine was considered really bad. And if it was green, then you're close to death. Now, what I was thinking was, how did pee even get to that color? Because what were you eating for it to be that color? And of course, if it was white, then you're perfectly fine, you're healthy, you're good to go. Now, a lot of people are weirdly afraid of the dentist. And I completely understand, because, they're drilling, there's like people putting fingers in your mouth, so it's not that appealing. But during medieval England, it was way worse, trust me. At least now we have professionals to where they wear gloves and they have instruments and we have anesthesia, and it looks like they know what they're talking about. So during that time, people would risk hearing the dentist say that they were infected by a worm, a tooth worm. During that time, they believed that there was actual living worms in your teeth that were causing decay in your teeth. And you would think that pulling out the tooth would be a way to fix the issue. No, that seems way too intelligent, way too above you to be thinking that way. So what they would do is they would get a candle that was made of sheep's fat, and then they would mix it with some seeds, and they would burn the candle near your tooth, and in their mind they would think that the heat would draw out the worm. Can you imagine going to the dentist and they have a little dish near your tooth and a candle, and just sitting there waiting, putting heat on the tooth, waiting for a worm to come out? I wonder if any worms ever did come out, because how did you keep doing this to people? If the worm didn't come out, did you just stand there for hours waiting? I'm just not understanding how they came up with this idea. I think one of the most disturbing things that I learned about from our past is the fact that they couldn't tell when a person was dead. There have been so many cases where they would bury a person where they thought a person was dead and they weren't actually dead. So there was this lady named Alice Blunden, where she had taken some poppy tea and it made her look dead, so the doctors declared her dead, and they buried her. And then days later, some children were running around in that area and they heard noises, so they ended up taking her out, and they saw that she was bruised, and you could tell that she had been trying to get out. So they decided to leave her there and just watch to see if she's still alive. And some dummy who was supposed to be watching her closed the lid on the coffin, left because it was raining, and I don't know why they checked on her again, and again they noticed that she had been trying to get out. She had new wounds of her trying to get out, and this time she was actually dead. So because of this happening so often, which is weird that it was happening more often than normal, they started making all sorts of contraptions to try to tell if you're actually dead or not. And I think that's the weirdest thing. That's one of my biggest fears, being buried alive. I feel like I already have claustrophobia just thinking about it. But anyway, that's some of the creepy things I've found that people thought were normal during the medieval, Middle Ages, whatever you want to call it. There is so many more weird things that happened, but I want to try to keep this video short. So if you like this type of video, I'll do a part 2. Just like and follow, and I'll see you next time. Bye.